Hello and welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sean.
And we're glad you're here. For the next 15 minutes, we'll talk about a sales issue, big and small, for salespeople, sales leaders, and selling situations. We're glad you're here, and let's get started.
Last week, we talked about all things competitive analysis, but we stopped short in talking about, okay, what does that do for you? Once you do a competitive analysis, what does that allow you as a sales leader, an owner, a salesperson? What does it give you the opportunity to do? I want to unpack that a little bit here and then go really deep on a few actionable pieces you can do today for your business. We left off last week by talking about how to kill your competition, and we also covered how to avoid the no decision. The first thing I want to do is start with understanding why the no decisions occurred, and when you're doing your SWOT, how are you applying that to your sales process? So no decision comes, in my opinion, when you haven't done a good job qualifying the prospect. You haven't taken that 20 seconds of courage to ask the question, hey, is there any other strategic projects you're working on this year that could consume your resources, time, budget, anything in your business? And Sean, I think in the last podcast, you alluded to, hey, they could be building a new plant. They could be buying another company. They could be doing one of these big capital or time intensive and labor resources intensive projects that could limit you from being able to even do a project with somebody. So avoiding that no decision, it's my contention that it all starts in the qualification process. But when we start talking about doing that SWOT, PESTEL, SOAR, any of those analyses of your business, using that in the competitive space allows you to do things like know if your pricing is good, giving internal feedback about your marketing resources and sales. When I'm working with a new client, I often start with messaging. And the way you get to messaging is not by saying, hey, what are you saying? You get to messaging by starting to talk about, hey, we've done this SWOT analysis. We know that our strengths are here. We know that our ideal client profile, ICP, is defined. We've got a demographic and a psychographic around that. If you haven't gone through that process in your company, don't worry about it. We talk separately about that. That's a whole big process by itself. Again, you've got your ICP, you've got your personas. Once you know the type of company you want to work with, who inside the company do you need to talk to? And then also your USP, your unique selling proposition. We're acronym heavy today, Sean, but I think it's really important that we unpack a lot of this because this is the actionable thing that clients need from your competitive analysis. You've got a competitive features analysis. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go out to Microsoft today and look at their different packages that they sell. They sell user, enterprise, small business, home and office editions. They sell all these different packages of software. It's frankly the same, but it's at different price points. And they tell you what features you do and do not get. You can do that same kind of matrix against your competition. That's how you do a competitive analysis and use it in sales and marketing.
Great point there. Thank you for doing that. And I love using the example of Microsoft because looking at companies that are massively successful, and by any definition, Microsoft is massively successful, is just a good way for a company to get better. Looking at those people and learning from them is really, really important. So we talked a little bit about pricing. You said at the top of the episode, we're going to give you some actionable things that you can do. I'm going to give you a hint for everybody out there in listener land. You delivered a price to a prospect, and that prospect didn't buy. You need to be ultra careful in this step of the process, but you need to write down almost everything that happened from that point on. When you've given a price to a prospect and they haven't bought and they aren't going to buy or they're giving you pushback, you need to write down every one of their objections. You need to write down every one of their reasons, and you need to communicate that to your sales manager, to your marketing manager, if you have that in your company, to your product marketing manager, if you have that in your company, to your CEO, whatever. You need to communicate that to everybody. This is what they said. This is what they did. This was their rationale that they gave you back. This is why our price was 80% high or 20% high or 300% high. We need that feedback. We need that really good quality feedback to go to the rest of the company and don't just whine about it in the next sales meeting. Because if you whine about it with your peers, then you are a Debbie Downer in the sales meeting. You're telling everybody else, all your fellow salespeople that look up to you, that things aren't working right. Don't just do that in the sales meeting. Instead, take those notes, take all that information, take that real world information, and deliver that back to people that can make a difference in your company one-on-one. Don't whine about it in the sales meeting. Do it one-on-one with the sales manager, with the marketing manager, with the CEO, whoever makes a difference on pricing, and make sure that they get that feedback. In fact, ask the customer, look, we've done as good as we can do on our pricing, and I appreciate that it didn't meet your expectations. Can we have a meeting with the CEO of my company, with the marketing manager, with the product marketing manager, whatever title makes sense, so that we understand exactly what your concerns were with the pricing and why you felt that it was out of scope? That feedback, that real actionable feedback, will allow you to be more competitive in the future. And that's why it's important for you to do that. You are the ears of the marketing people. You need to help them get better.
Getting better, that's the goal. And it's frankly the goal of this podcast is how do we get better if everything else is the same? How do we invest in ourselves and in our product and in our communication so that the company gets better? Our quota gets better, our production gets better. We just talked about the pricing and the feedback that we can take back to our companies, but to build on to that, after I do my SWOT and competitive analysis, what are the other things I can do inside my company, inside myself and my time, the things that I can control to return better results? One activity I go through with every one of my sales reps, whether they're new or old, and if you want to write this down, take out a piece of paper and make it a 3-column sheet, right? In the first column, write who it is you're talking to, your prospect or your customer name. In the middle column, write this. This is really critical. I want to pause for a second so you can get up to speed here. Write down how they measure value in their terms. That's column number 2. Now, column number 3 is very straightforward. This is what you can control. It's what is my questioning strategy to understand their value? So it's a very simple, straightforward 3-column exercise that I put everybody through. And if they can tell me what their customer's value is, then we can start to map the conversation. This is a strategic sales conversation. If that doesn't line up with our USP, our SWOT, or we realize that we're talking to a person where they're not our ideal client profile, we then as sales leaders or salespeople can recognize, oh, shucks, I'm spending the time in the wrong environments. Those wrong environments typically lead to the no decision. There I go again, thinking about, okay, how do I use this insight into how I sell more effectively in a day in, day out basis? So you do that exercise enough, you create all your prospects and you map all those out. The thing you're able to do quickly is start to erase the first column names. Once you've got the list of how people measure value and how you design questions to fit that value, it doesn't matter who you talk to tomorrow, next week, or next month. If you've already thought through how they measure value, you know how to talk to them. You know what questions to ask. You become a better salesperson because you put in the work. 57%, this was a statistic from our last podcast, 57% of companies don't do the analysis on their competition. They don't know who they're selling against. This will make a difference for you. If you take away nothing from today, take away the idea that if you spend this time on this activity, this is more valuable than searching LinkedIn or searching a database trying to find the right title of the right person at the right company. Because if you're only going to show up and say, what keeps you up at night, you're not doing your job. If you're allowing your sales team to show up to a prospect meeting and go, tell me what keeps you up at night, you're not doing your job as a sales leader. If you're allowing and not giving marketing feedback and allowing them to send emails like, would you be interested in a list of so-and-so decision makers? You are not doing your job. For all of you out there who've received or been on the receiving end of any of these questions or outreaches, you're face palming right now. You're going, golly, let's make marketing and sales better. You can do this, but it starts with you.
That was so fitting. And I'm trying not to start cracking up laughing right now. The number of times that I just get that message out of the blue, I can give you this. Well, I don't need that. So don't bother me with that. It's just amazing. Don't be one of those salespeople. Let's dig into a little bit about what we talked about before and what Kevin was just talking about. When you were talking about what is important to the client, what's important to the prospect as they start developing a relationship with you, it's really important for you to understand that nobody expects nirvana in their search for a new product or a new service. I'm assuming by now you've listened to us enough to know that you should have a good qualification. They really do want to buy something. They need to make a change within their organization, and you think you can make that change for them or help them make that change. That's why you're selling to them. So let's assume that we've done all that good qualifications. Now let's remember that most people put together a wish list of what they want that to be, but they don't know what it is. You are the salesperson against them. You are here to guide them through that process. You are the person that is designated that you are going to help them make a decision in your favor in the time frame that you want. Therefore, you have to understand that they are not going to look at all 10,000 competitors that are out there on the marketplace. They are going to look at a few. They are not going to find everything that they want from anybody else. So I don't want any salesperson, and I tell this to all my salespeople that work for me, I don't want you to be upset about we don't do X or we don't have Y in our product. Because chances are the customer really doesn't want that. If you have sold that product to somebody else, then you probably don't need to worry about that. Now, this is not an excuse for your R&D group, your product development group to not put those features in. But your job is to sell the product that exists today, not the product that you wish they would hurry up and build. Your job is to sell today. You need to understand that it doesn't have feature X, and that's perfectly fine because the other customers that you guys have don't have feature X today. Go in there and be confident that you can sell this and be confident that you can explain the features and the capabilities and what the value is of your product without what it doesn't have. And understand that just because a customer or prospect brings up this thing that it doesn't have, that doesn't mean that it's a deal killer. You need to sell around it. You need to spin around it. It doesn't do that, but it does do these other 14 things that you didn't ask about, Mr. Customer. And you need to spend time on that. And that's how you're going to beat your competition when your product isn't fantastic. But then you should tell product development, your R&D, your CEO, hey, you know what? Yet again, another company talked about that thing that we're trying to figure out how to do and we don't know how to do. We really need to figure out how to do that. That's the feedback one-on-one that you need to give to your CEO.
Feedback is so critical. That's frankly what we're talking about here. Competitive analysis is internal feedback. That's you doing the research. Now, we would not be doing ourselves a favor if we didn't say, hey, what are the things we should do instead? Like I was pretty negative a few minutes ago on what emails we should be not receiving as sales leaders. Instead of sending the email that says, would you be interested in a list of so-and-so decision makers? Instead say, hey, Mr. Prospect, this is a cold outreach. This is what we do for a living. I'd like to have a conversation to see if this is a good fit for you. A transparent, upfront approach is a much more effective email than, hey, would you be interested in a XYZ list? And 30 of those lists come at us every day. Be more intentional. If you know your ICP, your ideal client profile, and you know some of the problems they're solving and what they're facing in the market from a competitive standpoint, you can write a better email. You can write a better call script to reach out to these people and be more effective with your time. If you want to spend more time in front of more customers, spend time researching how they buy. And that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining Kevin and Sean on Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Tune in every Tuesday or when our podcast drops every Tuesday at 4:30, wherever you consume your podcast. And don't miss our monthly CEO workshop where we unpack some of the big CEO questions facing your business. Until next time, we're looking forward to seeing you. Happy selling.